Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Chasin 28 podcast here on PinstripeProspects.com, episode number 7. Happy to be back with you once again this week. We've got a great show coming up for you. Of course, we're going to get into another DJ LeMahieu update. We're going to get into Francisco Lindor, not going to the Yankees, but going to the other team in New York. It seems like all the other New York teams are making moves but the Yankees, but we're going to talk about that a little bit. Yankees did make some more minor league moves that we'll talk about. We got a good segment for you coming up toward the middle of the show. International free agency begins on Friday, and we have Ben Badler from Baseball America on. We recorded that interview earlier on Wednesday. Ben will tell you about some of the young players the Yankees are looking at acquiring in this international free agent period. We'll get into a little bit of breakdown of the system, including, of course, we had to talk about Jason Dominguez, so that will pop up during the interview as well. The one American League team did make a big move this week. Liam Hendriks going to the White Sox. Talk more about that. And, of course, our final thoughts for this week as we're about a month away from spring training. Time flies, but not the free agents. Want to remind you, you can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Be sure to subscribe to the Chasin 28 podcast on iTunes, which you can find. You can search Pinstripe Prospects. That's where you'll find it. Or anywhere else you get your podcast. Chances are we are there. Please give us a rating. We hope it's 5 stars. I want to hear from you. Tell us what you like. Tell us what you don't like. You can email me as well, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. And, of course, we'll have details on how you can get our Dugout membership program towards the middle of the show. But back with me once again is my distinguished panel of Pinstripe Prospects podcast experts. James O'Connell's back with us. James, how you doing?
Hello?
James, how you doing?
Doing good or whatever. Yeah, you just cut out there. Yeah, you just cut out there. I don't know what happened. I'm good. Losing my patience a little bit with the Yankees, but overall not doing bad.
And also joining us this week is the founder of our the great person who runs our social media, Alexis Farinacci's here. Alexis, how you doing?
Doing good. Excited that we're potentially maybe a month away from baseball returning, and for some cities with a limited attendance and fans finally back in a stadium. Something to be a little bit excited about for baseball fans as spring training approaches.
Yeah, that was some interesting news with a memo being sent up by Rob Manfred about we can get in maybe a little bit later. No temperature checks needed. You're not going to need to show that you've tested negative for a COVID test or a vaccine test. So we can get into all those things as baseball still hasn't really come up with any rules yet, which makes it interesting what the free agency rate might look like. Let's get into DJ LeMahieu to start off with. And I feel like, we need a sound every time we do a DJ LeMahieu update, but we seem to have one almost every week. Tim Brown from Yahoo reported over the weekend that it doesn't sound like the Yankees and DJ LeMahieu are going to sign a contract anytime soon. LeMahieu seems to be ticked off at the Yankees, and apparently he wants to try to re-engage with other teams, which I feel like that should have been done already. We're in mid-January. So, James, I'll ask you this question. Are the Yankees more to blame for this whole impasse with LeMahieu, or is it just a slow free agent market?
I think it's a little bit of both, but the Yankees are certainly to blame to a certain degree. This is their best hitter, really undisputed their best overall hitter. So, I don't know. They're kind of playing the same game they did with Derek Jeter free agency, if everyone remembers that. I think that was in 2014. Mm-hmm. Not 2014, it was 20, but they seem to be playing games with the wrong type of guy. DJ doesn't take me to be a guy that likes to play games, and this is a guy that they need. I don't know. Can they be that far apart as far as money? It could years. Like the Yankees really can't just give him the extra year. Is it really worth losing him over an extra year, over an extra season? I don't think so. This team becomes significantly worse. In my opinion, they become the second best team in this division. I believe the Blue Jays become a better team than them overall if they don't have DJ LeMahieu. So they better figure it out quick before he truly gets unhappy and tries to sign elsewhere.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but at the same time, I think the Yankees are going to wait until somebody actually proves they're going to go to 5 years. To me, I look at it as more of the free agent market because we're still not seeing Springer close to signing anywhere. We're still not seeing Bauer, despite him putting out videos of how his free agency is going. Still not signing anywhere. Marcell Ozuna's not signing anywhere. Real Muto's not signing anywhere. And to me, I think it comes down to these teams I think LeMahieu is not exactly the main prize for some teams. I think when you look at the Blue Jays, for example, he might be their guy they try to get desperate for if they can't land any of these players with all the money they have. And I don't think teams are going to be willing to also pay a guy for 5 years when they aren't seeing the Yankees go to 5 years. So, Alexis, I don't know about you, but to me, I look at it as, while the Yankees, I think, are some blame into it, I think it's just the fact that, well, we're in mid-January and nothing really has gone on in terms of free agent signings. There have been trades, but outside of Liam Hendricks, there's been no huge moves in free agency.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's definitely, like you guys have kind of said, it's a little bit of both. I mean, you just named, Ricky, a bunch of these top guys, Springer, Real Muto, Bauer, LeMahieu, all of which are still yet to sign, question marks up in the air as to where they're going to go. So, I think if they're the Yankees, yeah, they need to make a move and they need to make it quick. But same token, all these big prospects are still out there and they're not going anywhere yet. So I think they're all playing in the game. They're all waiting to see who's going to give them the most money here.
It's to me, I think the only part you can blame the Yankees on. I feel like if they've been so public, and we've talked about this on previous podcasts, if they've been so vocally out there that they want him back. You got Luke Voigt basically telling Bruce Beck from NBC, we need him back. When you have players basically saying you need the guy back, I feel like maybe not desperate's the wrong word, but I feel like there should be an urgency for the Yankees to get it done, especially if it's their only move of the winter. To me, Alexis, I'm kind of surprised, again, when Boone and Cashman were so vocal a few weeks ago that there wasn't I won't say a rush to get things done, because, again, it's a business, and with the pandemic, it's totally different. But I feel like that would have been the move they would try to get ahead of everything, and they're just kind of at a standstill.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you on that. They both have been somewhat vocal, but at the same time not vocal. And I think all the players on the Yankees, too, have really expressed the fact that they want LeMahieu back. I think if you're the Yankees, yeah, money talks, but you need to be listening to your players, too, and keeping your team happy, too, while you're at it. And this is a guy who I think, number one, we can't afford to play without. Number two, all the players like him, all the fans like him. Yankees need to start making moves. And we thought we would kind of see that happen already, and we haven't.
See, James, I also want to get frustrated the Yankees aren't making moves, but then I sit back. I really don't see anybody else outside of the same 3 or 4 teams doing anything until I see the rest of the sport start to do things. And maybe it's just the higher market players are asking for too much money, and they're waiting for maybe the teams to call their bluff, which, as we see, only really happens in basketball if you followed the other big team in New York over the last 24 hours. But if the players aren't going to go anywhere, then why, if you're a Yankee fan, should you get frustrated with your team's not making moves? About 4/5 of the league isn't making any moves.
Well, here's why you get frustrated is the San Diego Padres see themselves as contenders. So what do? They went out and made some moves. The Mets are trying to create a reputation where they are within the near future. So they went out and made a move. They got Francisco Lindor. The White Sox, they are contenders, arguably the best team in the American League at this point. And they went out and made a move, got Liam Hendricks. We want to see that. And with the Yankees, why do the Yankees want to sit back and wait? Oh, no one else is doing anything, so we might as well not either. I think that's BS. I think this is a team this is a franchise that is championship starved, given that they haven't won since 2009. I just don't like comparing the Yankees to the rest of the teams in the league, because the Yankees are in a situation where they almost have to win. Not almost have. Well, I mean, everyone has to win, but you know what I mean? It's just been so long in the Yankees, this and that. I don't like the fact that, because maybe because the Blue Jays and the Astros and whoever else in the league, they're kind of sitting on their hands, and we can too. No, they should not be doing that. They are in no position to sit back and relax. They're not coming off a World Series, an AL pennant. They're not coming off of anything. They need to be out there being aggressive and making moves to make their team better.
You mentioned one of those moves, and that being the Mets trading for Francisco Lindor. The day after we recorded last week's podcast, the Mets Indians make a move. Lindor goes to the Mets along with Carlos Carrasco. So good job by Sandy Alderson and Steve Cohen pulling that one off. And Jared Porter, the GM. Cleveland gets Andres Jimenez, Ahmed Rosario, Josh Wolf, and Isaiah Green. Isaiah Green, of course, was a prospect. If you followed our draft coverage, we actually wrote up a draft profile on Isaiah Green. So if you want to check out more, if you're an Indians fan listening in, feel free to look at that as well. And James, I know I want to touch on this with you first because you were very vocal on it from the Yankees' perspective. And it was kind of based off, I think, a conversation we talked about last week about prospect hugging in a sense. Should the Yankees have explored this trade more in your mind?
I mean, 1,000%. There's no debate about it. I kind of drew early in the offseason what I thought was the best move for the Yankees to make the best way for the Yankees to approach the offseason. It was getting rid of Luke Voigt for a reliever or some type of arm, moving DJ to first, Kleber to second, and bringing a shortstop. And if all that the Mets were going to give up was Andres Jimenez and Ahmed Rosario, then why couldn't the Yankees give up something like that for Francisco Lindor and Carlos Carrasco? And I'll tell you why, because they're not prepared to pay Francisco Lindor. The Mets are. That's the reality of the world we're living in. So if I was Brian Cashman, Hal Steinbrenner, it's clear you need a shortstop. It's so obvious that Gleyber Torres is not the answer at shortstop. So the fact that Francisco Lindor was on the market and the Yankees checked in, but at the end of the day, they had no intent on paying him that much money in the offseason. And it's bizarre that the Mets did. But, however, I do think potentially next offseason with that loaded shortstop class that they'll go after a shortstop. But as far as just dropping the ball on the Lindor thing, like, why couldn't – first of all, they need an arm and they need a shortstop. Why couldn't they pull something like that off? Why? What was holding them back from doing that? I think the answer to that was money.
I think part of it is money, because I think you're also talking about giving up prospects and paying a guy $300 million. Because Lindor, if he stays with the Mets, which he probably is, he's going to get close to $300 million. So you also have, if I've seen people talk about Trevor Story as a plan B if LeMahieu doesn't sign, you still have to pay Trevor Story. I think and the Yankees can't have so many $300 million contracts. You can only have so many to go around. I think and I actually like the deal for Cleveland considering the circumstances, because I think you look at that deal and you add Rosario and Jimenez. Jimenez at least can be your shortstop of the future in Cleveland. The Yankees don't have a guy that they could give Cleveland that could start right away and play in the infield and show good promise in the shortened 2020 season. And Rosario could be a good player, gets a change of scenery, can move around the infield, but you could, even if you wanted to play Rosario, at short and play Jimenez at second. You now have a middle infield. You don't have to worry about spring training chemistry and trying to figure things out, your double play positions and things like that. You've now got that in place. And you get two guys that, let's be honest, when you look at the Mets, Sandy Alderson did a good thing by trading Wolf and Green, two players that were drafted by Brodie Van Wagenen. They have no attachment to any of those guys. So they can make those moves knowing they didn't invest high draft picks in those players. So in a way, I think it was perfect for the Mets. And in the Yankees, I just feel like, to me, the Mets had the major league to close to major league ready guys to make this deal. I mean, look at the Yankees farm system, and their upper levels of the system don't have as many guys. And I think that's largely, we can get into this as a big picture discussion, why the Yankees don't make that many big moves. They don't have many upper level guys ready to contribute at the big league level.
Agreed, but in that same token, wouldn't you consider maybe a Clint Frazier on the type of scale as a Med Rosario, if not more valuable than a Med Rosario?
But they had to I think they had to throw Rosario in to get Carrasco. So maybe it's that. I don't know if Rosario, again, it wasn't really the centerpiece of that deal. Plus, Carrasco was making a good chunk of change, too. The Mets are taking back as well. So that also is a factor in that deal where Cleveland's payroll is so low. But I would like Carrasco, too.
And all respect to the Mets for being willing to take on that money. That's what good teams do. That's what winning teams do. We don't hold on to guys. Here's the thing that really pisses me off. If you're not going to start Clark Schmidt, if you're not going to start maybe Davey Garcia, if you're not going to give these guys a significant role, then just freaking trade them, man. Then get the value. So many year after year after year after year, the Yankees hold on to these guys that, oh, no, we're not going to trade Miguel Andujar for Garrett Cole. We're not going to trade whoever for this guy. They do it every single year. And then when they get to the major league level, they don't really give these guys that much of a chance, or they don't pan out. So my thing is, why not just make the damn trade, especially when you're in a situation here where this is a must-win. This is a must-win team. It's a win-now team. It has been for the past 2 or 3 seasons. For what reason are we holding on to these guys if we're not going to utilize them? Now, if Clark Schmidt and if Davey Garcia and whoever else in that system is going to play a significant role on the team in 2021, then I'll bite my tongue and saying, okay, well, I can see they're at least trying to develop Clark Schmidt at the major league level. They're giving Davey Garcia his chance. Then that's different. But if they don't plan on utilizing those guys, then why even have them? What's the sense?
I think, though, when you look at, for example, Schmidt and Garcia, until the Yankees make actual moves with pitching, you have to consider them as part of your 2021 plan. So you can't say, all right, we're going to give you Schmidt, and then Schmidt would have been a part of the plan. So I think that also is apples and oranges for the Yankees. And Alexis, I'll throw this to you for this. To me, I don't think it really means that much to the Yankees that Lindor goes to Mets. I know people are like, well, the Mets are doing everything, and the Mets are stealing the offseason. We've seen offseason winners fail before. And at the same time, Steve Cohen, I know fans hate hearing this. Steve Cohen didn't lose anything last year with the Mets. The Yankees did. They've lost something. How much that is, we don't know. But they've lost something to the point where they're not going to make moves like this. And the Yankees have made moves like this before. They traded for Stanton. They've signed Garrett Cole for $300 million. And to me, I think you look at this. I look at it this way. For an American League perspective, Lindor's out of the league. That significantly decreases Cleveland and further weakens the American League while strengthening the National League. That's going to be a dogfight for a lot of those teams trying to get to the World Series.
Right. And I get that mindset in a sense, but the whole getting better by default thing really is aggravating because the Yankees have many opportunities to get better themselves. This is, if you look up and down this roster, this is not even arguably, this is the worst team they've had since 2016. I'm very comfortable in saying that. 2017, they were probably better. 2018, they definitely on paper, they were better. 2019, they were better. 2020, they were better. This is the worst team they've had in years as it currently stands without DJ LeMahieu. So why are they not trying to – in an American League that looks very winnable, it's absolutely wide open. Houston's going to get worse. Tampa, the reigning AL champions, for some reason traded off the race and let go of the number 2/3 starter. Why are they not capitalizing on that? Why are they just sitting back in their hands saying, oh, Tampa got worse, this one got worse, so by default we get better? Take some initiative. Strengthen that bullpen at least. Do something. Because sitting back on your hands and doing nothing, it's only going to hurt you.
Yeah, I definitely agree with James on that too, because if you look at the situation with Masahiro Tanaka, and you had a couple reports came out this week that said clubs are concerned about his health right now and the way his medical exams are coming back. And for the Yankees, you need a rotation. Your pitching was awful last year, outside of maybe Garrett Cole, who I don't even think brought his best stuff last year, in my opinion. But if you're the Yankees, you need to be making moves to go get pitching. You need to get someone to replace DJ LeMahieu, who, again, a lead hitter in the league this year. Someone who we can't afford to hit without. I mean, I agree with James that this is going to be a bad lineup if he's not in it. And it's going to be sad to see, and I think really frustrating for Yankees fans. So yeah, I don't know why they're just sitting back and letting not everybody else make moves, but letting the Mets, letting the Padres. When there's ways that we could definitely take advantage of some of the free agents that are out there and really become a top leader in the AL again.
But I think we can look at it from the Yankees' perspective. I don't think it's a Yankee problem. I think it's more of an industry-wide problem. Because I think there's teams just afraid to set the market. They don't want to be that first team that gets criticized for giving an awful contract out to – when you look at the pitching, for example, and Ken Rosenthal, I think, had a report that the Padres had done background work on Tanaka. So I think that's something to keep an eye on because it's San Diego. They do everything. But you look at the industry as a whole. Outside of Bauer, when you look at the pitching, for example, everybody's pretty much the same, especially now that Sagano decided to go back to Japan. There's not really a big name I have to go crazy for. I could go to Corey Kluber's workout like the Yankees did and figure that out, as every team is going to be on Corey Kluber practically. Jake Odorizzi, Jose Quintana. There's nothing really that stands out to the point where Brian Cashman can look at it and say, I can wait till the right guy falls at the right price, and nothing really distinguishes these guys. I mean, that's really the market, unless you want to give Bauer the highest AAV more than Garrett Cole, which the Yankees are not going to do. You're really going to wait for pretty much the same kind of pitcher you're getting at hopefully a cost that you're willing to take on. That's sadly just where baseball is at in 2021 in free agency.
Right, but the Yankees aren't just limited to the free agency market. Look at the Padres. The Padres saw exactly what you just said. And what they do, they went on trade for freaking Yu Darvish, where there was no word on him even being available, and trading for Blake Snell. I'm not saying go out and trade for 2 superstar starting pitchers, but my God, there's a market out there for and there's players to be had, especially at the right price. I mean, they're not just limited to Trevor Bauer and Jose Quintana. You can look elsewhere. You flirt with the market. Why? I haven't heard one rumor about anything with any team. They're not talking to anyone about anything other than DJ. It seems like they're just sitting back, waiting. Oh, once DJ decides what he wants to do, then we go. No, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, it seems it's quieted down the rumor mill from when I think it was like Luis Castillo from the Reds a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Obviously, they're not going to go down the Sonny Gray reunion. I don't think anybody wants to go down that route for the Yankees. But to me, I think you just look at it, and even the trade market. The Padres have – I think everybody wanted to trade with the Padres because of what they have. You're not – unless you're going to say, oh, here, team, take Jason Dominguez or take Clark Schmidt or take David Garcia. And I think I've talked about this on past podcasts and even in past seasons of this podcast. To me, the Yankees pay the Yankee premium all the time. You take a team that pays X amount and you say, oh, why can't the Yankees pay that? We don't know if teams are asking a lot more from the Yankees than they are from another team. To me, I've always considered that a factor, like the Marcus Stroman stuff from a couple years ago. Toronto's going to ask for more for Stroman than they are from the Mets because they're not going to want to trade Stroman to the Yankees. So I think you also have to keep that in mind with Cashman. I think they're eventually going to make moves. They're not going to go a whole offseason with doing nothing. I think they know that. I think they realize, even though they'll tell you the talent is great, you're relying on a lot of guys to bounce back and stay healthy. That's not a good recipe to stay in contention. But I think at the same time, if you're the Yankees, you're not going to go out there and overspend on Jake Odorizzi, for example. You're not going to go out there and I think they don't need to make the blockbuster move like the Padres had to make, like the Mets had to make. To me, they just have to fine-tune this roster. And I think in this market, there are going to be opportunities in late January, early February, heck, into March, where they can fine-tune this roster and wait to see how things play out with teams that lose out to big free agents as well. That could also open new trade avenues. That's where the sport is at a standstill. And to me, that's the problem with the sport, is because we're in January, there's so many people still out there and you don't have much news. Meanwhile, all these other sports steal headlines away from you, and we're busy debating the same things of why baseball doesn't even have the rules set for DHs or no DHs, and that can determine how moves get made too. Like, I think you look at it this way as well. Let's take this for example for the Yankees. Are you paying Kyle Schwarber $10 million like the Nationals paid him? Because to me, I don't want to give a guy that hits all home. I've seen this. I don't want more all home run strikeout guys on this roster. And Schwarber going to a team that they don't even know if they have a DH yet. As good of a talent he is, I think Miguel Andujar is a better left fielder than Kyle Schwarber. I'd rather see him play at left field.
Right. Well, that's another thing where we still have that issue where we discussed in the offseason show. Was they still have this problem where it just seems like they're bought all in on this philosophy with analytics and with kind of power, with all or nothing guys. Like, it's just at this point, it just seems like they're all bought in on it. They have no intention on changing their philosophy, and I think that's going to hurt them. So I think that them bringing in a guy like Kyle Schwarber would have just been kind of more validation as they just kind of believe in what they're doing. They're going to keep pushing, keep pushing. Meanwhile, postseason after postseason, it showed that this hitting philosophy has not worked. So I think that's honestly the most alarming thing. Not even they haven't made a move. I guess to your point, is it's slow all across the league. It's just the fact that they're content with what they've got, and what they've got has been not even nearly good enough year in, year out.
Alexis, are you surprised they Kyle Schwarber did mention in his Zoom press conference the Yankees went after him. Did you want to see? I forget if we've talked about this in the show before. Did you want to see the Yankees go after Schwarber?
Not necessarily. I mean, I agree with you guys in liking Andujar more. I think the Yankees, I love Aaron Judge. Giancarlo Stanton was inconsistent last year. But, I think he's also a great guy, great player. But the amount that these guys either hit it over the wall or they strike out, I don't think the Yankees can afford to put another bat like that in the lineup. I think you need more of your line drive guys, more of your guys who can get on base and potentially score some runs. I don't think you can afford any more. Well, he's either going to hit it out or he's going to strike out, but we're going to get him because he can hit it out of the park. I'd like to see more line drive hitters who we know can get on base.
So the Yankees did make a couple of small minor league moves. We talked about the names like Socrates Brito last week and Greg Allen. This week the Yankees got Tyler Lyons back on a minor league deal, lefty reliever who's been part of the Major League bullpen over the last couple of years. The Yankees could use definitely a middle reliever from the left-handed side. Lyons at least fits that equation. The interesting one was Yoli Chasin, who actually, when he signed with the Yankees, became a U.S. citizen, and it was his birthday. So definitely three good things for Yoli Chasin, who pitched with the Braves a little bit last year. In 2019, he pitched with a couple of teams, went 3-12 with an ERA over 6. This is a guy that I'm not very familiar with, but he had a couple of good years with the Rockies. It seems like, James, it's this Brian Cashman idea of, all right, at least now I have veteran major league depth at the AAA level if the Yankees do have an injury, because you're going to have to fill innings, and maybe Chasin gives at least the Yankees a few innings during the year.
I mean, where this roster currently stands, you could easily see Chasin being a starter for the Major League club, not even the AAA level. After Garrett Cole, I think we've discussed it pretty much every show. There's nothing. There's nothing set in stone. So I could see Chasin playing a huge role for this Yankee team, and that really is sad. It's sad to say that.
Alexis, what did you think of the Chasin signing?
I thought it was a good signing, and agree with you guys that I think there's a chance that he could play a role in this team this year. I think they're going to go do anything and everything they can with these guys that they are signing and getting them into rotation, getting them into the playing action this year. I'd like to see more veteran guys, but you know what? If it's going to take these minor league guys, then I guess the Yankees got to do what they got to do.
And there should be a few more of those. James, go ahead.
No, I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay, I thought you did. All right. So coming up next, we're going to get into our conversation with Ben Badler from Baseball America. We're going to talk about the international free agency signing period. Ben's going to get some information on that, how the pandemic is going to affect things, which normally would be in July, but this year it's been in January. But before that, we want to remind you that we provide exclusive minor league content to paid subscribers with our Dugout membership program. You get scouting reports, player interviews, features, and much more in addition to our free Major League coverage. Sign up today for our Dugout membership program for either $5.50 a month or $40 a year. And if you want to take a shot on this, you get your first 7 days free using the promo code Chasin28pod. Again, CHASIN 28pod. Chasin28pod is the promo code you use. Give us a shot. With that subscription this week, you got my conversation with Braden Bristow, the Yankee right-handed reliever who actually used to start a relief outing where he struggled is what best identifies him as a player. I found that really interesting, so be sure to check that out. That's one of the questions in the interview we did with Braden. So coming up, you'll hear our conversation with Ben Badler. We'll react to it on the other side and finish up the rest of Episode 7. We'll be right back after this. The international free agent signing period begins Friday, and what better way to look ahead to some prospects the Yankees might be targeting or just the general period than one of the best writers that covers the international free agency period. He is the senior writer over at Baseball America, and joining us today is Ben Badler on the Chasin 28 podcast. Ben, thanks for coming on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Happy to have you. So before we get into specifically with the Yankees, COVID-19 has had an impact on everything in baseball, whether it be the major leagues, the minor leagues, the draft. We saw firsthand what the draft impact it had. Give us an idea on what kind of impact COVID-19 has had on this international signing period other than it moving from July to January.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the big one. Usually this starts every year on July 2nd, and instead the signing period got pushed back to January 15th. So there was that delay. But yeah, I mean, when the pandemic hit and everything kind of shut down in baseball in March, MLB put into place a ban on all in-person international scouting that lasted basically through the end of September. So it was about a 6-month period where teams were not allowed to go out and scout players in person, and they couldn't bring them into even after that, they couldn't bring them into their academies either up until just recently this month that changed. So, that's a big part of the evaluation process. But, look, the reality is a lot of, the way that players sign with clubs is not, right before the signing date, they come to an agreement. It's, these players commit to clubs, in a lot of cases, 1 to 2 years or more in advance of the signing date. So I don't think that the rule changes or the impact of, COVID itself had a huge impact on the majority of like the top players in the class. Like I think, there are some players who are, shifting around to new clubs, but for the most part, a lot of those, commitments and agreements were already lined up well ahead of time. So I don't think that had that scouting shutdown had a huge impact on, who's signing where. But it definitely impacts teams' ability to, even just kind of gauge the progress of how their own class of players is coming along, especially at, this age when, players are, 15, 16, and, obviously with a delay, some of them are now 17 years old, 2-3 months, a lot can change for these players. And if you're not able to keep up with them in person for, 6+ months, plus, obviously scouts are not traveling as much as they used to, even after the scouting ban, just because of the, health and safety considerations. So, in that amount of time, you have players who, not just get stronger, but, they're young enough where you're talking about they might grow an inch or they're 2 inches taller. So, they can physically change, their tools can change, their on-field skills can change. So it definitely makes it a little bit, or I should say a lot more challenging to just to try to get a good gauge on where a lot of the top players are at right now.
Normally we look at the Yankees and they're a team that will spend on the heavy end of the international free agent pool. Obviously teams have a certain amount of money, and the Yankees have made their big expenditures in the past, and we'll get into that later on. What do you expect from the Yankees in this free agent period? Are they going to be a team that still maybe not goes for the big players, but how do you think that they are going to fare out in this current period?
Yeah, they signed Garrett Cole too, so that's going to drop their bonus pool. Every team has roughly equal amounts of money, but the Yankees are going to have less because of the Cole signing. So the other trade or the other difference I should have mentioned from the new rules is that now teams also cannot trade for additional pool space anymore. The Yankees have typically been one of the very aggressive teams trying to trade for extra bonus pool space. But now MLB kind of changed the rules really like in the middle of the game on everybody. So I think that's going to affect some of their strategy as well. So, you're not going to see, you're not going to see him sign a player like Jason Dominguez, but there's not many players like Jason Dominguez, right? But, like the previous year, they spent most of their pool pretty much just on Jason Dominguez, and, Angel Castellanos a good player too, but it was primarily about Dominguez. This year, I think they'll spread it around a little bit more, but the class is really going to be centered around Hans Montero, a pretty well-rounded shortstop out of the Dominican Republic.
What can you tell us about Montero? I know it's tough to evaluate these players, but is there anybody you would compare him to for our listeners to as an idea of what he could maybe become down the road?
Again, it's like we were talking about with the caveats that it's, a lot of these players have not been seen in competitive environments in a while by the industry, but I did get a chance to see him in person before. Yeah, I mean, he's somebody who has a pretty high probability of staying at shortstop. Obviously, you're going to see on, January 15th, there's going to be about a gazillion players listed at shortstop who signed because, they're, 16 and now 17 years old. And I think Montero just turned 17. So, who sign as shortstops, but eventually they're going to move off the position. I think one of the draws with Montero is a pretty high probability of him sticking at that position. He has pretty good hands, good arm. He runs well. And then it's a pretty short swing too. I don't see him being like a huge power type guy. He's not, all that big, but does a lot of things pretty well. And for a player who has a, very high probability of staying at shortstop, it's a pretty intriguing player to have, especially at a premium position like that.
For sure. And you mentioned Jason Dominguez, and the Yankees signed him in 2019. What are your general thoughts on Dominguez as he sits as one of the Yankees' top prospects this season? Yeah,
I got a chance to see Dominguez play. The Yankees had like a really abbreviated Dominican instructional league last year, so he didn't play a lot of games, but I did get to see him play one rain-shortened game. It was pouring rain, and they called the game pretty quickly, but even in that pouring rain, he hit a ball over not just the fence that they have at their academy, but there's like another bigger chain link fence to try to, keep the balls from going into the trees, and he hit one over that one too. So huge power and really exciting, explosive athlete too. I mean, you watch him run around just shagging balls in the outfield. You can see the explosive first step that he has and a really strong arm too. And it's fun and easy to talk about how good his tools are because they are so good. But at the same time, I think he's all just like a really smart baseball player too. He's got a pretty good feel for the game. He's not just raw tools. I mean, obviously he's, really young, hasn't gotten to play in any official games this year. And obviously it was, with the Yankees not having even, a U.S. instructional league, it's, another year where we didn't really get to see much of, or not many people got to see much of him, I should say. But I think it's what's exciting about him is not just how loud the tools are, because they are really loud, and he is a really good athlete. But I think he's also somebody who has a pretty high baseball acumen and good feel for hitting in games too. So obviously disappointed that pretty much everybody had their minor league season shut down this year, but definitely very disappointed that we didn't get to see Dominguez play at all in 2020.
And this is a Yankee team that, while people talk about maybe their lack of hits in the draft, where they've done a great job in international free agency. When you look at guys they've signed like Gary Sanchez, Miguel Andujar, they've been able to grow through that development. For a team like the Yankees, how would you evaluate the success they've had in this aspect of player development for a team that always picks in the bottom of the draft? It seems like a lot of their success in a way hinges on international free agency.
Yeah, I think the Yankees have done as good a job as just about any club in international. I mean, you look at their top 30 prospects list right now, and I mean, there's certainly a lot of very young, far away, high risk players there, but I think more than half of their top 30 prospects right now are international players, and obviously that's with the graduations of players like Luis Severino and Gary Sanchez and Miguel Andujar, and Devi Garcia still qualifies for us as a prospect, but you're starting to see him get to the big leagues already, really at the same age as like a college junior. So pretty advanced player. Obviously their number one prospect, Jason Dominguez, is a top 50 prospect in all of baseball. So I think the Yankees have done a good job, and I think it's it's not like they're just, everybody talks about, they have financial resources, but it's not like they just outspend everybody for players. I mean, we're especially now for the past several years now, we've been in a hard capped international bonus pool system. And, I think one of the, areas where you're seeing them have success too is, not just the top signings, but especially the arms. I mean, they've, every year it seems like they have some arm for, $10,000 where I'm like, who is this guy who's, popping up, throwing 98, 99 in the Gulf Coast League or somewhere else. So pretty good contingent of pitching prospects that they've added for not a lot of money in a lot of cases who've turned out to be some of their better prospects, I think, or certainly the better pitching prospects in the organization right now.
And that's why I feel when you go into next season, for whenever we get the minor league season started, if and when that happens, you look at the Yankees and all this pitching they have, and you mentioned changing the rules where you can't trade international pool money, which the Yankees do better than anybody with kind of those guys that they can't get a lot for. I feel like, Ben, and tell me if I disagree, the Yankees need this year to figure out, okay, who do we keep, who do we trade, because they have such a logjam of great arms. And it's either eventually you got to see them in the big leagues at some point, or you got to figure out what we can keep to help the big league club, because they're watching the team out in the West Coast kind of master both player development and winning a championship. And the Yankees are kind of in that crossroads where they're doing a great job long-term development, but at the same time, they're not getting the championship results or the on-field results in the major league level that the fans would want. It's kind of a balance they're still trying to figure out, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I think a lot of those arms, like, you have players like, Luis Medina or Rolancy Contreras or Alexander Vizcaino, like a lot of these guys who were, mostly at the A-ball and low A level, a lot of them in 2000, I'm trying to keep track of the years now, in 2019. And it's, guys like, Medina, like, some of these guys have like huge upside, but a lot of, red flags too that, some of them, it seems like they're starting to turn the corner, but without the 2020 season and without, a lot of these guys did not go to like, the alternate training site. And there was no instructional league this year for these guys in the United States. So, I think the 2021 season is going to be huge for a lot of these pitchers and for the Yankees, just, I'm sure their thoughts are kind of the same, where it's like, some of them we just quite don't know what to make of quite yet in terms of like where their progress is at. But I think obviously 2021 season is going to be pretty telling as far as, which of these guys have taken that step forward and which of these guys might have more, more risk still in their profiles.
We'll get back to the Yankees in a second, but looking at this class as a whole, what's the team that you feel we should be keeping an eye on as the team that could arguably have the best international class as we head into Friday?
Yeah, I think the, couple teams are the Rays and the Cubs, and, those teams do a great job or have done a great job, certainly the last several years with international signings. I mean, it's, for those two clubs, it's really about, they're going to sign more than one player each, but really it's kind of the big signing for each one is the draw there with Christian Hernandez, a shortstop from the Dominican Republic who's going to be signing with the Cubs. He's been a standout in this class for a long time, real, projectable frame, athletic, and a really advanced swing for his age and very easy power too. And somebody who has as much as we can say on a lot of these kids, has a pretty good track record of hitting in games too. Somebody who's, certainly a bigger body, but it's not, still wiry, still lean. I think he's going to have even more power as he fills out with a chance to stay at shortstop too. So pretty exciting upside with him. And then the Rays, their big crown jewel of the class is going to be Carlos Colmenares, a shortstop from Venezuela, not quite as tall as Christian Hernandez. It's about 5'10" or so, more of a filled out type frame, but a really smooth, easy balanced swing from the left side with really good path through the hitting zone, and another player with really good instincts for the game, real easy actions on both sides of the ball. It's, with both of these guys, it's, a lot of, pretty loud tools in with these players, but also just really advanced in-game skills too that really separate themselves for their ages. So again, I mean, obviously both those clubs and the Rays with, they signed Wander Franco and Vidal Brujan and some other really good international players too. So I'm not shocked that two of the best players are headed to those organizations.
So Ben, when you look at the Yankees, the rest of their class, we talked about Montero earlier. Give me a name or two, and you did a great preview for those that go to Baseball America, check it out. Give me another name that you keep an eye on, maybe the Yankees that isn't as talked about, but a guy that you like that they might be acquiring.
Yeah, I mean, I think the next guy for them, I think as far as how the money is going to line up from what I understand, will be Fidel Montero. He's not related to Hans, but another player from the Dominican Republic and an outfielder. I got the chance to see him playing in the Dominican Prospect League. Physical, athletic, pretty good tools. Some more question marks I think about the bat in game. There were some times where he was good, sometimes not so much. So, but yeah, definitely sticks out. I think when you see him. Pretty physical and an athletic outfielder who's from the Dominican Republic.
So, Ben, when you look at the Yankees as a whole in this, over the years you've covered the international period, outside of Dominguez, is there a player that you've tracked with the Yankees that you tended to follow the most that you feel could have the direct impact on this system? Is there a player that's caught your eye more so than others?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to cheat and say Davy Garcia because I'm sure everybody kind of already knows him. I liked him a lot ever since he signed and has shown some good things early on. But yeah, I mean, like Roansy Contreras, I think is a, I'm sure a name, your listeners probably know, but there's the big kind of glob of arms where it's kind of like take your pick between Medina, Roansy, Contreras. I know they didn't sign Luis Gil, but they had a bunch of guys in that group. But Alexander Vizcaino, and I know they didn't sign Abreu either. It was a trade, but of that group of guys, I'm pretty intrigued by Roansy Contreras. I know some of those other guys in that group throw harder. Not that Contreras is a soft tosser by any means, but I think he's got a pretty good feel for pitching and pretty good feel for his secondary stuff too. Obviously, wish we had some more updated reports on these guys from 2020, but I think he's got definitely some starter traits and pretty good feel for pitching. So he's somebody who I think ever since he signed, I've been pretty high on him.
Yeah, I like the fact that they have a good mix of arms. When you look at, they have the hard throwers, and I think in this day and age you need that to go up in the zone. But you have Contreras, and to me, watching him from Staten Island a couple years ago, a guy showed very good feel of his off-speed pitches. I think that's one of those things where I think with the Yankees, eventually it's going to be how those guys distinguish themselves with the off-speed pitches, because they all got great fastballs. I mean, that's been pretty clear. But I feel like when we're looking at trying to separate these great young talents that the Yankees have and how far they get advanced aggressively depending on how they get evaluated after missing so much time, it's really going to be, in my opinion, just the off-speed distinguishing who moves up and who doesn't. We even saw a guy like Miguel Yajure move up and make his major league debut last year. So just to me, that seems to be, in my opinion, the separation for all these guys.
Yeah, I think if you're looking on the other side for bats, one guy, Antonio Gomez, I've seen since he was amateur, really barely played in 2019, which is his first season. But when he's on the field, it's just a chance to be a special defensive catcher. I mean, if you're being conservative, it's a 70 arm. It might be even better. in-game pop times under 1.9 seconds. It's just an absolute cannon that he has. And I don't think he's going to be like a middle of the order type bat, but I think there is, he held his own, certainly. I think if not maybe a little bit more in his, brief time in the Gulf Coast League. I think he's got a chance to have enough bat to be an everyday catcher, but would certainly want to see him, healthy and just playing a real season for more than we've got a chance to see him play, because the defensive potential with him is pretty exciting.
And another player, Ben, that I'm personally a little bit interested in, he's kind of right here in my own backyard currently. I live in Port St. Lucie, Florida. Yoelqui Cespedes, younger brother of Yoenis Cespedes of the Mets. Given he's been here in PSL training with Yoenis, and we talk about how these guys haven't really had an opportunity to train a whole lot or compete in games, do you think Yoelqui has a little bit of an upper hand or an advantage heading into this signing period, being that he has trained with Yoenis and clubs maybe have gotten a little bit more of a chance to see him?
I think he'll definitely move faster than these other players. I mean, with these kids are going to sign at 16, 17 years old, like even like a Juan Soto, Fernando Tatis Jr. type scenario. They're still a few years away from contributing. Obviously, Yoelqui's older and has a chance to get there faster, but like in Yoelqui's case, like going back to the international scouting ban. So that actually, like, my understanding of that rule was MLB was applying that scouting ban rule to all international players, regardless of whether the player was in the, Dominican Republic or Colombia, Venezuela, or in the United States. So, obviously, meanwhile, all of these summer showcases, for, all these big summer events were still going on, and teams were still scouting them. But if you're an international player, you actually, teams were not allowed to go see them even in the United States. Was my understanding of that rule. So I don't think a lot of teams got a ton of updated looks at Yoelqui Cespedes, and really by the time that he left Cuba to look to sign with a major league club, a lot of teams at that point, like we were saying before, had pretty much already committed most, if not all, of their bonus pool space. And on top of that, like, teams, are not allowed to trade for pool money anymore this year because of the new MLB rules since COVID hit. So I think a lot of teams also said, we, especially, given the very real health and safety concerns, said, we're not, it doesn't make sense for us to, go in and, try to scout this guy. So obviously the White Sox were, a different situation, having some more pool money in their pool. But yeah, I mean, even then it's, different in scouting him in that environment compared to, games and, seeing him against some more advanced competition, which, teams did get to see him while he was in Cuba. But I think he's definitely going to move faster than these other players that we're talking about, because he is older than these guys. But still a lot of uncertainty on, I think, just the quality of his bat, and really won't have that answered, I don't think, until we actually see him in games and see him get tested against some better pitching.
So Ben, when we know at Baseball America with the draft coverage, there's always those players that don't get talked about, at least in high amounts of hype, but are analysis and scouting reports, like people that scout him, as their favorite player. Is it the same international free agency? And if so, who's your favorite player that doesn't really get talked about that you're interested to see how he develops? It doesn't have to be the Yankees, just in general.
Yeah, I mean, usually that's it's tougher. I'll give you some names, but it's a little bit tougher this year just because of all the constraints, not just with COVID, but also with how early these players are committing to sign with teams, and when they do that, they stop really being scouted by the industry as a as a whole, certainly, and at least in a competitive environment. Some of the guys who I liked were, who maybe don't get talked about quite as much were, Starlin Aguilar. He's going to be the Mariners' top signing this year, infielder out of the Dominican Republic, going back to what we were talking about with Montero before. He's played shortstop. He really is. He's not. I don't think he's going to ever play a game there in pro ball. But really, the draw with him is just a really sweet left-handed swing and a pretty good feel for hitting a lot of bat speed and some power that comes with it. Samwell Basayo is a physical catcher from the Dominican Republic. He's going to sign with the Orioles. Pretty good swing and arm strength and power from the left side. And then Daniel Cueva is going to be one of the Rangers' top signings this year. Shortstop out of Venezuela, another kid with a pretty smooth, balanced swing. Pretty good bat to ball skills. Samwell Zavala is going to be one of the Padres' top signings this year out of Venezuela, left-handed hitting outfielder who's just got a really good knack for hitting. He's one of the younger players in the class too. I think he's starting to grow into some more power, but usually I'll go around and see these players right after they sign in the Dominican Republic and what's called like the tricky league, which is just like an unofficial league for these kids who would typically sign on July 2nd, where these the teams will put them together in games, and they'll have Dominican instructional league games, and I'll see them there, and I'll get a much better feel for the players, and frankly, I think the teams will get a much better feel for their own classes as well. Seeing all these guys on the same field and how they react in games that way. So fortunately don't have that opportunity this year, but those are some of the guys I think who are pretty high profile names, but maybe don't get quite as much attention as some of the other guys in this group.
Last question for you, Ben. I know you talked about Gomez as the player you look at from the position player side. One guy to me, and I'm not sure how much you get a chance to look at him, at least as a young player on the international side for the Yankees who had a great 2019, is Michael Escato, hit .315. I know stats aren't the end-all be-all. This is a guy that every time I seemed to follow what he was doing, he was jumping off the page with the numbers he was putting up. If you have any familiarity with him, can you tell us a little about him and what you think his future might be?
Yeah, real interesting sleeper. That was their top guy out of the Dominican Summer League in again trying to keep track of my years, 2019. I actually saw him as an amateur player. I didn't see anything that really jumped out, but I know that obviously the Yankees liked him, gave him, I think it was like $350. But yeah, pretty interesting guy. It's more tools than I thought. Pretty good speed. Some strikeouts are a little bit of a concern, but he does make hard contact. He's got a strong arm. He runs well. So definitely a sleeper, I think, in that system to watch for this year.
So, Ben, let our listeners know how they can follow you on Twitter and where they can find all the international free agent work that you've been doing over at Baseball America.
Thanks. Yeah, we Twitter, Ben Badler will be posting hopefully as many signing photos as we can get on January 15th and keeping people up to date on those as they happen. A ton of free videos on my Instagram account. Just type my name in, Ben Badler. It'll pop up so you can see a lot of the top players. Those are all free. So players from all over Latin America, all the international market, draft picks, minor league prospects. Try to post. Obviously didn't get a chance to post as many of those guys for this year, but try to post as many videos on my page there as I can to share with people. And then at baseballamerica.com, we have all of our rankings and scouting reports and updated information from draft, international, minor league prospects, all of our prospect coverage there. So that's kind of the core of what we do is for our subscribers at baseballamerica.com.
arguably the go-to place to check out anything draft, international, free agency, Baseball America is where you want to go. Follow Ben's work. It's fantastic. Ben, thanks again for taking the time out of your busy schedule. We'll keep track of what you're doing, and thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
From Baseball America for hopping on the show. A lot of things to get into with that interview. Alexis, you were on with me for that one. What did you take away from it?
I really enjoyed talking with Ben. So thank you to him for coming on our show. Just took away that it's going to be an interesting international free agency signing period with the fact that these teams have not been able to really communicate or scout at all these players due to COVID and due to the laws set in place by Major League Baseball. I think that made for an interesting, or is going to make for an interesting signing period, and trying to see where these guys go. Excited for the couple guys that are expected to go to the Yankees.
To me, I think I looked at it, and James, this is something we've talked about, I think, on past shows. That's why I asked him the question about the Yankees. They do a great job in the international period. I mean, they get so many players where you have the Sanchez's, the Garcias, the Andujars. We could rip their drafting over the last few years. I know a lot of fans have, and they don't really have a lot of impact players through the draft of recent years. But they kind of make up for it this international period. And obviously, everybody's going to wait for Dominguez, but there are so many good players from the international ranks. You look at Miguel Yajuri, who got called up last year out of the bullpen, Luis Medina, who did a good job in the Puerto Rican League this winter, Roansy Contreras, who I've seen in Staten Island. There's just so much international talent, and the Yankees front office has, in my opinion, done an excellent job evaluating those players and what's a tricky market to evaluate.
Yeah, they always are massive players in international signing. Most of the system is kind of built off of international free agents. Like, for example, Gary Sanchez is an international free agent. Luis Severino, his core players, they're all international free agents. The Yankees always make it known that they're massive players. They made it a point throughout the years to acquire international signing bonus money in trades. So they must have a phenomenal international scouting department, because every year they walk away with the top talent in the class, so or near the top. So kudos to them for always coming out on top with that.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those weird years for the Yankees. Like, if you look at MLB pipelines, top 30 prospects, the Yankees don't really have a player right now they're linked to in that top 30. Of course, that comes to the fact they lost a good amount of international money for signing Garrett Cole. Now, of course, you take Garrett Cole. But remember, we also talked about at the time there is a consequence to making those moves. Like, you lost 2 picks in a 5-round draft. So eventually that's going to cost you with Garrett Cole. But at the same time, you want the player. But I think when you look at, and I thought Ben brought up an interesting point, Alexis, with the international money where you couldn't trade for it last year. And the Yankees, I always think, do a great job of maybe like a Caleb Frere in the past, where they'll trade him and they'll get international money to help them out. Like, they'll pile up enough international money where they can get Jason Dominguez and get an impact player for their organization. This year they couldn't do that. And a lot of teams, I think now with the Yankees, are saying, all right, we're not going to make a huge move because we know we might be able to draft these guys in Rule 5. The Yankees used to be able, like with the Britton trade guys they were going to lose in Rule 5. I think kind of the rules have changed, and it's kind of hurt the Yankees also in making moves, because teams know they can just get these players anyway. They don't have to give up international money or they give up the big players, and they'll just take them in Rule 5 later on.
Yeah, and I think that's what could make this also a slower international draft signing period, with the fact that you do have Rule 5 now, and you can go get those guys for cheaper there, and take your opportunity to save that money right now, which I think a lot of teams want to save the money.
I also am looking forward really to Jason Dominguez. I know a lot of people are, and I think to me, when you look at the Yankees, and as we'll hopefully through the next 2 weeks look at the farm system and evaluate some of the positions, I'm interested to see how aggressive the Yankees are with their minor league assignments, because you look at all the young pitching they have, how many go to Hudson Valley, how many go to Somerset, who goes to Scranton, because we've now wasted a year of player evaluation, sadly, because of the pandemic. And James, you and I have talked about it with right-handed pitching, with catching. To me, where these players start off with when we get to a minor league season is going to be really indicative, I think, also where the team views a certain player, and be kind of what they did over the offseason to get them to get that aggressive assignment maybe to start 2021.
Yeah, just as he said. Hello?
Yeah, you're still here.
Yeah. Jeez, what was the question? Oh, I just cut out.
Basically, to me, I think when you look at 2021 and how it's going to be really interesting to see how the Yankees use if they assign aggressively some of these positions we've talked about, like catcher, like the right-handed pitchers, like the Heels, Medinas, etc.,
right.
and where they might go, and it might tell us how the Yankees view them as potential future players in this organization.
And it was mentioned in the interview, Luis Medina. That's kind of a guy that I really look for, because I remember he was kind of the next in my mind. I thought he was like, wow, the Yankees have another Luis Severino. I think I've said that on the show before, but he has massive control issues, and they seem to be kind of not resolving, but they were better when he went to Tampa, I believe. So we'll see what happens with him, and we'll see what happens with their assignments.
So, again, we want to be sure to check out that interview. Go to baseballamerica.com. Really fantastic job by the Baseball America crew on the international free agent coverage and the draft coverage, which they also do some great stuff on. Carlos Collazo and company doing some good work over there. A movie kind of touched on at the top of the show. Liam Hendriks getting that 3-year deal to go to the White Sox. To me, Alexis, I'm not sure if you agree. I think right now it's weird. It's early in the offseason, but it's late at the same time. The White Sox kind of look like the favorite in the American League, and adding Hendriks to that bullpen and also weakening the A's bullpen too. You have to love what Chicago's doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was a great signing for them in getting Hendriks, and they're expected to have a good international free agency as well. Now I think they're keeping up with the likings of the Mets and the Padres, and really showing that they're going to be aggressive this offseason and that they really want to make a push to be that much more competitive in 2021, this upcoming season. I think they're definitely a team to look out for. We talk about the Blue Jays maybe being one, but I think they've kind of gotten a little bit more quiet as of recent, and the White Sox have really gotten that much more aggressive. I feel like every other day it's either the White Sox, Mets, or Padres that you hear about. So I think the White Sox are definitely a team to be concerned with and to kind of look out for this year.
To me, James, I look at the White Sox, and yes, Cleveland's gotten worse, and the Twins, you're not sure where they are, especially if they lose Nelson Cruz, but they have a good offense. To me, I look at the White Sox, and the X factor for me is Tony La Russa, because you got a young lineup that's has a lot of breakout stars. Hendricks stabilizes the bullpen. They've got Lance Lynn, who is a more reliable Game 3 starter than what the White Sox threw out there in Oakland last year. To me, it's just how La Russa deals with this young roster that's ready to win now.
Yeah, that hiring never made any sense at all to me. But just overall talent-wise, I think the White Sox kind of established themselves as maybe the favorites in the American League as it currently stands. So that lineup is powerful. Not adding Liam Hendriks to that pen, you got a problem in Chicago. So they're, as of right now, as it currently stands in the American League, in my opinion, they're the best team.
So as we wrap up the show, I want to give our final thoughts. Again, it could be about anything we want in sports. Could be baseball, could be James Harden, could be hockey starting, could be golf, could be anything. That's what makes this segment fun. James, why don't you start us off? What do you got for this week?
Yeah, I can't believe James Harden's a Net. I have a hot take. Should the Nets not win a championship, this will go down. This will top that original Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry trade as maybe the worst trade in NBA history. It's cool. It's fun to be a Net fan, to see that talent. But if it doesn't work out, the Houston Rockets literally own your franchise. Just as the Celtics did, except this would be 10 times worse. So all the best of luck to the Nets. I hope they fail miserably. But and I hope this trade actually ends up going down as something that haunts them for decades.
It's the price of doing business in the NBA, and I think Sean Marks found that out the hard way, where players kind of forced their way into making this deal happen. We'll see how it works. I think the Garnett-Pierce trade was more ownership forced than player forced, so it's a little bit different. But it's been crazy what's been going on in Brooklyn, and they all got what they wanted. Now they got to perform, and I kind of feel for Steve Nash. I don't know how he's going to control that locker room there with those three.
Best of luck to him.
We're about to find out. Alexis, what do you got for this week?
I think my final thought is just going to be, looking forward to the 2021 season. I happen to be excited to see that there's a potential for baseball to return, especially for us here in Port St. Lucie to maybe be getting some spring training back here in Florida. Excited about that and excited to see what my Jaguars do with our head coaching position. I expect that to be announced any day now.
Yeah, that one is a certain college football coach could be in line for that one. That one is interesting.
Yeah, potentially.
I'll give you a couple. Let's start with the serious one, and then we'll go to the two kind of tidbits I found kind of interesting. First off, thoughts and prayers. We continue. We talked about that dream team that's now in a different place from all the legends we lost in the game in 2020. Now that dream team sadly has a manager, Tommy Lasorda, passing away. We didn't haven't been on since then. 93 years old, just kept fighting to the end of his life. And this is a guy that I never really got to. I didn't really get to see Tommy Lasorda much, other than that time he almost got hit with the bat in the All-Star game at Safeco. But a guy who's won 2 world championships is a legend. When you think of the Dodgers, you think, in my mind, of 2 people. You think of Vin Scully, and you think of Tommy Lasorda. The guy, every time I watch a video clip of him, he's always got a lot of energy. He's fun. It seems like a guy you always wanted to be around. He helped win the gold medal for Team USA in the 2000 Olympics, was 1 win shy of 1,600 for his major league career at the Dodgers, and to succeed in a big market like L.A., not easy to do. And it's a good thing he got a chance to see the Dodgers win a World Series this past year before, sadly, we lost a legend in the game. So our thoughts and prayers out to Tommy Lasorda. 2 things. Let's start with this one. I'm going to have a game for you guys here. Major League Baseball tweeted out about 20 minutes ago each team's longest tenured player. So we're going to have each of you guess who is the Yankees' longest tenured player. Let's have whichever one you want to start off. Go ahead.
Alexis, you go. I have a question. Is this currently on the roster, or could it currently signed and on the roster?
Currently on the roster.
Okay. Alexis, you can go.
I mean, I don't know if I really count because Ricky, I saw that tweet.
All right, so since Alexis has seen that tweet, I try to get by things and it does not work, but that's okay. So James, I don't know, Alexis, do we want to give him hints or should we let him try this?
I think we should let him try because I don't think it's going to be who he thinks it is.
Okay.
It's I have someone in mind, but I don't know. Oh, Chad Green.
Chad Green. All right.
Who is it?
All right, we'll give you a hint. Let's give him a hint. It's a position. It's a position player. That's your first hint.
Longest tenured currently on the roster currently. It can't be Stanton. It can't be Judge. It can't be Hicks. It's not Gary. So who am I missing?
You're on the right track with the last guess you just gave. With when you said Gary, you're on the right track.
I said Gary. So he's a catcher? Who?
Yeah, the catcher.
Sevy? I don't know. Who? Someone tell me.
All right, we're gonna have to. I found this odd too, and I'm sure Alexis, you did too. It is Kyle Higashioka.
What?
That's what I said.
How is he the longest? Hold on. That's.
I guess they can. Here's how they count it as. I thought that too, but I thought of this as well. I think it's how long they've been in the organization.
Yeah, that's not fair. I guarantee. I thought it meant longest years on the team, like on the actual team.
I wouldn't have got it without looking at the list. Alexis, I don't think you would have got it if you didn't look at the list. We would have been here all day.
Nobody's guessing Kyle Higashioka.
Exactly.
Nobody.
We can't fill 2 hours of just guessing. That's the whole point. We would have been here all day.
In what world? How does that? That's bull. In my opinion, that's BS. I don't know how Chad. Because I think I'd be right if that's the case. Because Chad Green has been up for how long? Since what? 2014.
They're trying to. No,
how is Kyle Higashioka been in the organization longer than Chad Green?
Technically, he was drafted by the Yankees.
That's wild. Screw that. He's been here since 2016.
I remember going to Stallion Yankee games and watching Kyle Higashioka. That would be the only reason. If you told me in the organization, I probably might. I wouldn't think I would have got it. But
I didn't know they meant just organization, like as a whole. I thought they meant on Major League club. But all right, whatever. I'll take my defeat.
I don't know if it's really a defeat. It's just I would say.
I think that's BS. I think that's both.
No, we won't say it's a defeat. The last piece I'm going to go to. It's kind of what we were talking about earlier. I could go off the Joel Sherman tweet that said the Yankees never do the Nets kind of moves, but I won't go off that. It's really about looking at the sport with Cleveland. I feel bad for Indians fans. We kind of talked about that with the Rays a few episodes ago. If you're an Indians fan and you had a Francisco Lindor shirt, you can't use it anymore. And like the Indians' best player is now Jose Ramirez. Are they going to spend to keep Jose Ramirez? Their payroll right now is, I believe, under $40 million. Their payroll is basically the equivalent of Garrett Cole's AAV. That's not a good thing for the sport, and the Indians make the most out of it. They do a really good job. Terry Francona is a fantastic manager. Like, the Indians somehow still find a way to compete every year with not making that huge financial move. But at some point, we're going to have a floor in baseball, because if you want these small markets to succeed, you need to have these teams be able to afford players for the duration of their career so fans have somebody to latch on to. Because by the time an Indian fan latches to Shane Bieber, he might be gone. By the time a Rays fan latches to insert top player here, they're gone. Matt Chapman for the A's, they might be gone. Maybe even the Rockies with Arenado. You gave him a big contract, he might be gone. We're at a point where at some point we have to have these teams. I don't know if we need a cap, and we kind of have a cap already with the competitive balance tax. At some point, we need a floor where you have to spend something. Like, you look at basketball and you have all this cap space, you still have to spend on something. Yes, you probably have to overpay on guys that don't deserve the money anyway, but at least you have to spend money to try to be better. In baseball, you don't really have to spend money. And teams have good farm systems that can be able to stay competitive, but it's about trying to make it for. I get it's not about the fans. It's not about in a way, but at the same time, if I have like a son or a daughter in future years, I want them to be able to attach themselves to a particular player, be able to root for that player rather than watch them move every 4 or 5 years. And it makes you enjoy, or at least cherish, when you have a player that's here for the bulk of his career.
The Dolans should sell that team. I don't know why they still have. I don't know why own a major league team when you can't afford anything. It makes no sense why they do that. So I think the Dolans really need to sell that team. Rob Manfred has to push that to happen, because it's not fair to the people of Cleveland. It's really not.
Figures somebody in Cleveland might have the chance to sell the team at a Dolan. When have I last seen that in a sporting event in the past? Interesting. Want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros, like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. Be sure to go to pinstripeprospects.com. Matt Jarrell did a fantastic job with our Yankee Winter League coverage. He wrapped that up this week as at least the Winter League for the Yankees came to a close. So he was doing a good job keeping us up to date on what's going on over there. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Again, just search Pinstripe Prospects. You'll find the Chasin 28 podcast. We have a lot of things going on. You feel free, if you have any suggestions, email me, rickjkeeler@gmail.com. What guests you want to hear, what topics you want us to talk about. If there's a trivia question that you want me to try to stump James and Alexis on, Alexis doesn't find the question beforehand, send that too. I'm all for it. So before we wrap it up, Alexis, how can they follow you on Twitter?
You can follow me at Alexis Farinacci.
And James, how can they follow you on Twitter?
At O'Connell NY.
You can follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555, and it's at RICK, letter I, Nader like a Terminator 3-5s. Catch my show, Kicking with Keeler, every week on Full Press Radio. Got a good show this week. Got a preview the start of the NHL season. We'll talk Nets. We'll talk NFL playoffs. We'll talk national championship. We'll have some fun along the way. And over at Barrett Sports Media, we wrote up a good podcast article on Jamel Hill and Michael Smith talking on Jamel Hill's podcast about ESPN for the first time publicly since they since they stopped doing SportsCenter a couple of years ago. Very interesting podcast. That one was. So check that one out as well. From all of us here at Pinstripe Prospects, remember, please sign up for the Dugout Membership Program. Use the promo code Chasin28Pod, CHASIN28Pod. Your first 7 days free. We greatly appreciate it. From all of us at Pinstripe Prospects, I'm Ricky Keeler saying have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, wear a mask, and we'll talk again the next time.
Later.
Have a great night.